During the summer vacation 5 years ago, my entire family was killed by a Tibetan brown bear. It was all because a few college students, hoping to go viral by filming a bear eating humans, deliberately lured the bear into my home. To protect me, my parents and younger brother were devoured alive by the bear, one after another, dying a tragic death. I narrowly escaped the bear's jaws, only to be captured by them, crippled, and forced to live stream for their profit, for 5 whole years. They made a fortune, while I was starved to death due to malnutrition. When I opened my eyes again, I realized I had been reborn. I was reborn just 10 minutes before the Tibetan brown bear attacked my home. I woke up from endless agony, only to find myself lying on the bed at home. The summer homework spread out beside the pillow still had the date written as August 15, 2020. I stared blankly at the familiar room before me, memories flooded in like a tide, even if I returned to ashes. I would never forget, it was exactly on this day 5 years ago, 3 college students who claimed to be geology majors, here to survey the nearby mountainous area. They knocked on our courtyard gate in the evening, saying their car had broken down, repairs would take time, and asked if they could stay at our place for the night. Our local community has always been known for its simple and honest folkways, and helping strangers in need is a common practice, so, without giving it a second thought, my parents warmly welcomed the 3 of them into our home. The 3 of them didn't stand on ceremony. As soon as they entered the house, they ordered my parents to prepare some good food. They said that in this remote, impoverished countryside, they had been starving all the way. After the meal, they started complaining that the guest room we had given up for them wasn't spacious or convenient enough, insisting on switching to a larger one. Although my parents were somewhat taken aback by their rudeness, but being inherently honest and simple, they couldn't bring themselves to kick someone out in the middle of the night with nowhere to go. But little did we know that the single moment of hesitation would lead to the tragic death of our entire family. That night, while we were sound asleep, the group sprinkled the bait for attracting the Tibetan brown bear all over our house, inside and out, after completing their task. They left without a trace, leaving behind only a few hidden cameras they had set up earlier, waiting to film the tragic scene of our family being eaten alive by a Tibetan brown bear. My dad was the first to notice something was wrong. Hearing the commotion, he got up to check the yard, but he ran straight into the Tibetan brown bear that had climbed over the wall. The Tibetan brown bear roared and pounced on my dad, slapping him a few times until he couldn't move, then began eating him alive. Starting from the abdominal cavity, Dad screamed in agony, enduring the intense pain as he loudly warned us in the house not to come out. I was jolted awake and saw the scene in the yard from the second-floor window. Dad's intestines were spilled all over the ground, and when his desperate eyes met mine, he shook his head fiercely. I knew he was warning me not to try to save him. I was absolutely terrified. I immediately wanted to go find my mom and brother after leaving the room. At that moment, I saw another, smaller Tibetan brown bear break through the back door on the first floor. The house was no longer safe either. I shouted, "Mom, brother, be careful, there's a bear in the house." Immediately, I discovered that Mom had been hiding in a blind spot on the first floor, but I had already shouted out loud, and the Tibetan brown bear that had entered the house heard my cry, turning its head to fix its gaze on me, seeing that the bear was about to come up to find me. Mom's face showed a resolute expression. She grabbed a nearby clothes-drying pole, let out a loud shout, and charged toward the Tibetan brown bear. However, with the thick fur of the Tibetan blue bear, the clothes-drying pole couldn't harm it at all, but this thrust successfully caught its attention. The Tibetan blue bear, which had originally intended to go upstairs, changed direction and turned to pounce toward Mom, with just one swipe of its paw. Mom's skull was shattered, and she collapsed limply to the ground, lifeless. My heart was completely shrouded in despair. I retreated to my room, thinking of climbing down from the window to escape to the first floor. I thought to myself, my parents couldn't have died in vain. I couldn't give up. I had to survive. I still had my younger brother. At that moment, I saw my younger brother emerge from the second-floor storage room. Little him held a bundle of hemp rope. I immediately understood and took the rope. We quickly entered the room, tied one end of the rope into a tight knot at the foot of the bed, and threw the other end out the window. I wanted my younger brother to climb down the rope first to escape. He was unwilling, saying he was a man and insisted I go first. I had no choice but to climb down the rope to the first floor first, but just as my younger brother saw that I was safe and was about to climb down the rope, the Tibetan brown bear that had just finished eating our mother came up to the second floor and entered the room. It howled and grabbed my brother's foot, dragging him back with brute force. I could only watch helplessly as my brother was devoured by the brown bear. The successive tragic deaths of my loved ones nearly drove me to the brink of collapse. Summoning every ounce of strength, I desperately ran outward. The courtyard gate was opened, and I saw a glimmer of hope for escape. But what awaited me was not a new life, but a deeper hell. The three people who had been waiting at the courtyard entrance early on grabbed me with sinister smiles and brutally beat me until I was crippled. I never expected that I would escape the jaws of the Tibetan brown bear, only to fall victim to the schemes of wicked people. When I woke up again, I was already in a dimly lit basement, suddenly jolted from my memories. Cold sweat soaked my back. I remember seeing my father being eaten alive by a grizzly bear from the second floor at that time. I happened to glance at the wall clock, and it was just past 12:10. The hands of the wall clock had just passed 12, and the ding-dong sound of the chime made me shudder. This meant that there were less than 10 minutes left before the Tibetan brown bear attacked my home. I rolled out of bed and rushed out of the room as fast as I could. My family's self-built house had 2 floors. The first floor consists of the dining hall, kitchen, and a guest room. The second floor houses our family's bedrooms and a storage room, one for my parents, one for my younger brother, and one for me. My brother's room is the closest to mine. I walked over and pressed down on his door handle. Fortunately, he hadn't locked the door, so I was able to push it open and enter smoothly. My 8-year-old brother was sleeping soundly in bed. Looking at his carefree sleeping face, my mind flashed back to the last look he gave me in my previous life, when he was being torn apart by a Tibetan blue bear. My heart felt as if it were being tightly gripped by an invisible hand. Tears welled up in my eyes, but now, with only 10 minutes to escape, I had no time to grieve. I fought back the tears and shook my brother awake with all my strength. "Shaojia, wake up, something's wrong at home." My brother groggily opened his eyes, and upon seeing my grave expression, he immediately snapped awake. He has always been obedient and sensible, asking no further questions, and quickly jumped out of bed to follow me as we ran outside. My parents' room was at the end of the hallway. When I pushed the door open and rushed in, Dad had already sat up alertly. "Shashia, what's wrong?" I immediately nodded. "There's also a wall clock in my parents' room, and I see that a minute has already passed." There's no time to explain the details of the rebirth, so I tell my parents, in 9 minutes, 2 Tibetan brown bears, deliberately lured here, will climb into our yard and attack us, both inside our house and in the yard. Food has been scattered everywhere to attract the Tibetan brown bears. We have to escape right now, or it will be too late. After hearing what I said, my mother gasped sharply, and my father's face instantly turned deathly pale. Just last month, someone in our village was attacked and killed by a Tibetan brown bear, so our whole family knows how ferocious and terrifying these animals are. My parents immediately stood up and, while heading out of the room, asked me, "Shashia, but how did you know the Tibetan brown bear was coming?" In a moment of urgency, I made up an excuse and said, "It was the 3 college students staying at my house who deliberately lured the Tibetan brown bear here. I overheard them talking. They aren't students from the geology university at all. They're just a few bloggers trying to go viral by filming a video of a bear eating people. Staying in our house is just trying to kill us." By this time, our whole family had already made it to the first floor lobby. My parents looked around and realized that the 3 people from the first floor guest room were indeed no longer in their room. Moreover, the lobby floor was scattered with chunks of meat that smelled incredibly foul and had hair on them. Dad bent down to carefully examine the meat chunks, his expression completely changing. He warned us to stay far away from this meat and not let any of it touch us. He stared intently at the meat in front of him and said, "These are likely the rotting flesh of Tibetan blue bear cubs." No wonder Shashia said it could attract Tibetan blue bears. The Tibetan blue bear is an extremely protective and vengeful creature. No matter how far the cub is, they can track it down by scent all the way. Those people threw the cub's meat into our home, intending to drive the Tibetan blue bear into a frenzy and take revenge on our family. Mother was so anxious that cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She said with regret, "I had a feeling those 3 were a bit off from the start. It's all my fault for being soft-hearted and not driving them away. Otherwise, our family wouldn't have ended up in this mess." Dad said, "Now is not the time for self-blame. Let's go. We need to get out quickly and then find a way to call the villagers to deal with the Tibetan brown bear." So we hurriedly rushed out of the house, but when we reached the courtyard gate, we found that it had been welded shut from the outside. No matter how hard we pushed, it wouldn't budge. Dad immediately turned and rushed back inside, returning moments later with a hammer. He swung the hammer hard at the door lock, the clang of metal against metal piercing the quiet night, but the courtyard gate was simply too sturdy, leaving only a few dents around the lock. Our loud commotion startled the 3 people waiting outside the courtyard. Soon, a fierce argument erupted outside the door. "What's going on? Did they find out?" A rough male voice cursed angrily. "Damn it. Couldn't they just stay inside and get eaten by bears? I told you we should have used sleeping pills." Another shrill voice retorted, "You said this family was stupid and it wouldn't be necessary. Now look what happened. Stop bickering about useless things. Hurry up and think of a solution. We can't let the duck we've already caught fly away." My parents were furious. Mom shouted at the courtyard gate, "This is murder. You'll be arrested. I'm calling the police right now, and none of you will get away." Dad also yelled sternly, "We kindly let you stay, and you actually tried to harm us. Have you no conscience? Let us out now, and we won't pursue this matter." Suddenly, it fell silent outside the door for a few seconds. Then, a voice feigning sincerity spoke up, "All right, we were in the wrong. Don't call the police. We'll figure out a way to let you out right now." Immediately after, the sound of hurried footsteps faded into the distance. My parents breathed a huge sigh of relief. Mom said, "Thank goodness. At least they've come to their senses. As long as we get out, everything will be fine." Dad also nodded, but his brow remained furrowed. I stared fixedly at the courtyard gate, thinking to myself, are they just giving up like that? Will they really let us go? Something's not right. A greater unease rose within me. My parents didn't really know these three people. In my previous life, I spent a full 5 years with them. How they mercilessly abused me is still vivid in my memory. For money, they would stop at almost nothing and would never give up so easily. Thinking of this, I quietly warned my parents. I think they agreed too quickly. "We should still be cautious," Mom said optimistically. "They're probably worried about getting caught and are a bit scared. We're separated by a courtyard gate. What can they possibly do to us?" As soon as Mom finished speaking, we heard footsteps approaching outside the door. One of them shouted to us, "Hang in there. We're going to cut the lock with a chainsaw," Mom said. "See, we're finally saved." But as the chainsaw buzzed to life, I also caught a whiff of an increasingly strong, fishy stench. In that instant, a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. I shouted, "Mom, Dad, little brother, get away from the courtyard gate." Almost simultaneously, a man wearing black-rimmed glasses appeared over the top of the wall. He sneered and flung a large basin of foul-smelling blood water toward us. Fortunately, my warning allowed the family to step back a few paces. Only Mom was a bit slower, and a few drops of blood water splashed onto her pajamas. Dad immediately had Mom take off her pajamas and throw them away, then took off his own shirt and gave it to Mom to wear. The bespectacled man, seeing his plan had failed, spat fiercely, "Damn it, you managed to dodge it." Then he sneered again, "Heh, but it doesn't matter if you dodged it. The Tibetan brown bear is coming, and you won't be able to escape. Haha, you fools are just waiting to be eaten." With that, he left the courtyard wall. The bespectacled man's words left my brother and mother trembling with fear, and my face turned pale as well. The blood that the bespectacled man just splashed must have been from a young Tibetan brown bear. Once it gets on you, you're bound to be hunted down by the Tibetan brown bear, with no chance of survival. Dad held us tightly and comforted us, saying, "Don't be afraid, I'm here, and you'll be fine." Then he glanced at the courtyard wall a few times and told us he'd be right back. Before long, Dad brought over 3 chairs and explained, "The ladder at home was taken away, so we have to figure out how to stack these chairs and climb over the wall." We quickly sprang into action. Since my younger brother was the smallest and lightest, after placing the chairs against the corner of the wall, we decided to let him go first. As my brother stepped onto the first chair, Dad carefully stacked the second one on top. My brother wobbled as he stood up, then took the third chair Dad handed him and stacked it on top. Time was running out, and by the time my brother finally climbed to the highest point, there were less than 2 minutes left before the Tibetan brown bear arrived. I urged my brother, "We're running out of time, we need to hurry." My brother nodded and was about to lift his leg to climb over the wall, but when he saw the wall clearly, his face instantly turned pale. He turned back to us and said, "The wall is covered in blood. We'll get it all over us if we climb over." My heart sank to the bottom. My home stands alone at the foot of the mountain, a half-hour walk from the village along a mountain path. It was built here back then for my father's convenience as a forest ranger. For several kilometers around, ours is the only house. If you carry the scent of a Tibetan blue bear cub on you, there's no way to escape the bear's pursuit in the open, unshielded mountain forest. What should I do? Even if we are reborn again, can our family still not escape the fate of being eaten alive by the Tibetan brown bear? At that moment, a beast's roar echoed from the distant mountains and forests. My younger brother pointed in terror toward the distance. "Something is coming. It's so fast." My blood seemed to freeze, and my heart felt like it was about to leap out of my chest. "I know. It's the Tibetan brown bears. The courtyard gate is no escape, and there's nowhere to hide inside the house. I can see 2 Tibetan brown bears already charging toward our home, and our courtyard wall is nothing more than a low fence to them. They'll be over it in no time, once they get into the yard." Our whole family will undoubtedly become live targets, just waiting to be torn apart. A flicker of panic crossed Dad's face, but he quickly regained his composure. He took a deep breath and lowered his voice, saying, "Listen carefully. Back when I was a forest ranger, I had to guard against some large wild animals. When it comes to the Tibetan brown bear, what I know is that it has an exceptionally keen sense of smell. Especially those that have eaten human flesh, they are extremely sensitive to the scent of humans, but precisely because their noses are so sharp, we can use even stronger odors to mask our own scent, such as feces." Dad pointed toward the chicken coop in the yard and told us to follow him. He grabbed a handful of chicken droppings from the ground and smeared it all over his face, then onto his exposed arms and legs. He even took off his outer clothes and pants, repeatedly smearing them in the chicken droppings until they were thoroughly soiled. "Hurry, do as I do." We dared not delay, enduring the foul stench of the chicken droppings as we smeared them all over our bodies, to ensure an even coating. My younger brother even stripped off his clothes and rolled back and forth in the chicken droppings. Soon, the few of us, reeking of foul odor, quickly followed Dad back inside the house. As soon as we entered the house, Dad grabbed a hammer and headed straight for the kitchen. "I'm going to find something. You all throw the meat chunks in the house outside." We immediately sprang into action, using rags to cover our hands as we tossed the stinking meat chunks out the window one by one. After tossing it, I had a sudden inspiration and picked up the Highland barley wine barrel beside the dining table, splashing it all around the doors and windows. The alcohol was pungent and highly flammable. It could both help mask the scent and, if necessary, be ignited to delay the Tibetan brown bear. Just then, a massive bear's head suddenly appeared over the courtyard wall. Those green glowing eyes met mine, their hateful gaze sending a chill down my spine. I slammed the door shut, and my mother and brother quickly locked all the windows. "Hurry, use the dining table to barricade the door," I shouted. Together, we pushed the heavy solid wood dining table against the door. I had just finished all that when Dad came out of the kitchen. In his hand, he was actually holding a hunting rifle. "Kept it from my time as a forest ranger," Dad explained, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Not much ammunition left, and I'm not sure if it's still dry." Just then, a dull thud came from outside the courtyard wall. 2 Tibetan brown bears have already climbed in, through the cracks in the window. I could see the larger one was over 2 meters tall, while the smaller one was about the size of a grown man. In my previous life, it was these 2 beasts that devoured my family alive. Now they're back again, and their heavy breathing can be heard even from inside the house. At the moment, they are lowering their heads to sniff the ground. Cunningly following the scent, they begin to rummage through the yard. The footsteps of the 2 Tibetan brown bears linger outside the house. Suddenly, one of them stops in front of the door, staring intently at it, its wet nose pressed up against the door, sniffing fiercely through the crack. Our entire family froze in place, our breath almost coming to a halt. I could hear the violent pounding of my own heart. At that moment, every move the Tibetan brown bear made outside the house felt exceptionally clear. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I held my breath, silently praying that the ones at the door wouldn't notice. Bang! The sudden loud noise startled my younger brother, making him tremble. It was a Tibetan blue bear slamming its paws against the door. It seemed to be enraged, pounding on the door with all its might, again and again. Under its force, the heavy wooden door groaned with a strained creak. In the blink of an eye, a large dent had already formed. I thought despairingly, could it be that the chicken manure smell we had used to cover ourselves was completely useless? At this critical moment, the banging on the door suddenly stopped. The heavy footsteps gradually faded away, seemingly heading in the direction of the chicken coop. I threw a clean piece of clothing from inside into the chicken coop, my younger brother whispered, his voice trembling with the relief of having survived a close call. I thought, since they're so sensitive to human scent, maybe the clothing would distract them. I vigorously rubbed my brother's head and praised him. "You're so clever." My brother forced a smile. "Sis, you always say I sweat a lot in the summer. Who knew the smell could actually save lives?" I laughed and gave him a playful pat. After a brief sigh of relief, the gloom of the Tibetan brown bear still lurking outside once again weighed heavily on my heart. Our family was now like a turtle trapped in a jar. Even if we can keep misleading the Tibetan brown bears, they will eventually find a way to get inside. What can we do when that happens? Can Dad's hunting rifle really kill 2 bears that huge? My mind raced, desperately searching for a way to escape. Suddenly, I recalled my previous life. Back then, when I escaped from the bear and rushed to the courtyard gate, the gate was open from the outside, and those 3 people were all stationed not far from the entrance. Doesn't this mean that, at this very moment, they are still hiding somewhere safe, not far behind the courtyard gate, since they dared to lure the Tibetan brown bear? Those three must have enough confidence that they won't be bitten to death and eaten by the Tibetan brown bear. In other words, perhaps the only way to break the current deadlock is not to hide in the house, tangle with the Tibetan brown bear, and wait for their patience to run out. Instead, we need to figure out how to make those three open the courtyard gate, giving us a chance to get out. So, under what circumstances would they open the courtyard gate? Based on my experience from my previous life, those three would only think of approaching after confirming we were attacked by a Tibetan blue bear. Moreover, during those 5 years I was locked in the basement, I overheard them talking while drunk. Back then, they had agreed from the start that at least one must be kept alive, and this survivor would become a crucial source of profit for their hype. So back then, no matter who happened to survive, they would be captured and maimed. Thinking of this, I hurriedly asked my mother, "Mom, where's the electronic speaker at home?" Although puzzled, Mom found a small electronic speaker from the TV cabinet drawer and handed it to me. I took the electronic speaker and quickly recorded a sentence. Mom, Dad, and my brother all looked surprised. I then quickly explained my idea to my parents in simple terms, although they still had some doubts about whether it would actually work. But now that we were trapped inside, if we didn't do something, we could only wait to die. Dad was the first to agree, and then, as I suggested, he took the recorded electronic loudspeaker and went to the second floor. During his time as a forest ranger, his marksmanship was among the best. He could accurately throw the horn to the entrance of the courtyard. I directed my mom and brother to take action in the hall as well. We tore down the curtains and cut them into 4 large pieces that could cover our entire bodies. Then he took the remaining half bucket of barley wine and soaked the cloths completely in it. "Put this on later and rush out," I explained while busy with my tasks. The smell of alcohol can temporarily confuse the Tibetan blue bear's sense of smell. After completing all of this, the three of us stood behind the door, while keeping an eye on the Tibetan blue bear in the yard. I waited for my father to come down from the second floor. Soon, I heard a bang at the courtyard gate, then came my cries. Clear and distinct from behind the courtyard gate. "Help! Please, someone help, my whole family is dead, save me, the bear is coming, no, please don't." I nervously pursed my lips, hoping this move would work. Fortunately, within just a few seconds, I saw sparks flashing from the lock on the courtyard gate. Dad quickly went downstairs. The 4 of us draped ourselves in the alcohol-soaked curtains, held our breath behind the door, and waited for the perfect moment. After the continuous buzzing sound of the chainsaw crunch, the courtyard gate was suddenly pushed open. The bespectacled man stood behind the courtyard gate, holding a stun baton, but when he saw that it was just an electronic horn on the ground, his expression instantly froze. "No," I shouted, pushing open the door. Our family rushed toward the courtyard gate like arrows shot from a bow. The Tibetan horse bear in the yard was startled, noticing the commotion over here. Its massive body turned toward us, its nose twitching frantically, but the pungent smell of alcohol and the chicken manure odor on our bodies left them momentarily confused. The bespectacled man snapped back to reality and cursed loudly. "Damn it, we've been tricked." He immediately tried to close the courtyard gate, intending to trap us inside again, but how could we let go of this only chance to escape? Dad lifted the curtain draped over his body and swiftly raised the hunting rifle. With a loud bang, the bullet accurately struck the bespectacled man's knee. The bespectacled man let out a scream and collapsed to his knees on the ground. Dad exclaimed excitedly, "Thank goodness the bullet didn't get damp." At this moment, the other 2 people outside the courtyard also heard the commotion. They were standing not far away, next to a camouflage-patterned RV. The exterior of that RV was clearly specially modified and looked very sturdy. This must be the safe hiding place for the 3 of them. Seeing the bespectacled man fall to the ground, and our entire family not only alive but also rushing out of the courtyard gate, the 2 men instantly panicked. They turned around and tried to flee onto the RV. Dad raised his gun again, threatening them to stop. One of the tattooed men halted, shouting, "Don't shoot, don't shoot," but just as he turned around, he actually pulled out a pistol. "Get down," I heard my father roar. We had just thrown ourselves to the ground when the bullet whizzed past our heads. The tattooed man, seeing his first shot miss, fired 2 more rounds with a ferocious expression, but he fired too hastily. The bullets whizzed past us, leaving 2 smoking bullet holes in the ground. Asterisk click, click, asterisk. The tattooed man tried to fire again, but the gun only clicked. It was out of bullets. Dad seized this fleeting opportunity, steadily raising the hunting rifle. Bang. The tattooed man's knee erupted in a spray of blood with a loud crack, and he let out a pig-slaughtering howl, clutching his leg as he collapsed to the ground. At that very moment, an ear-splitting roar echoed from the yard. 2 Tibetan brown bears, thoroughly enraged by the gunshot, were charging toward the RV at an astonishing speed. The blond guy's face turned deathly pale. And he leaped into the driver's seat in one swift motion. Fuck, they're actually coming over. He didn't even have time to close the door before the RV lurched forward. Dad, quick as lightning, raised his gun and took aim. Bang. The RV's rear tire burst with a loud bang, causing the vehicle to tilt instantly and slow down. The blonde guy inside screamed, "We're dead. If the car's gone, we're all dead." We seized the moment the RV stopped and hurriedly jumped on board. As soon as I got on, I heard heart-wrenching screams from behind. Looking back, the bespectacled man by the courtyard gate had already been pounced on by 2 Tibetan brown bears. The larger one smashed his skull with a single blow. The smaller one was tearing open his abdomen with sharp teeth, pulling his bloody intestines far out. The surviving tattooed man, dragging his injured leg, desperately crawled backward, his pants soaked through. His face etched with despair, he looked at me, pleading, "Help, save me, please. Don't leave me behind." I stared fixedly at his terrified, contorted face, my mind flashing back to the previous life, when he had looked at my family dying in exactly the same way. Everything that has happened now is the consequence of his own actions. I slammed the car door shut with force. "Karma," I said coldly. The blonde-haired man frantically stomped on the accelerator, and the RV with a blown tire careened forward. In the rearview mirror, the tattooed man's screams abruptly ceased. The not yet satiated Tibetan brown bear had set its sights on him, and in the next moment, its jaws snapped his throat shut. Our family huddled inside the RV, with my father pointing a hunting rifle at the blonde-haired man's head, threatening him to drive faster. The blonde-haired man cursed and stomped on the accelerator, but what was terrifying was that the damaged tires prevented the RV from picking up speed. "Damn it. The car's out of control," the blonde-haired man suddenly screamed in panic. Then, like a runaway wild horse, the RV crashed straight into a tree trunk by the roadside. "Jump out of the car." Dad made a quick decision and pulled open the car door. Just as we rolled to the side of the road, we heard a loud boom. The RV crashed hard into the tree trunk, and the front of the car instantly deformed. The blonde-haired man was trapped in the driver's seat, his face covered in blood. Even more terrifying, after finishing off the tattooed man, the 2 Tibetan brown bears weren't satisfied and began charging toward the rest of us. "Run this way." Dad pointed to a steep slope not far away, densely planted with a protective forest. Tibetan brown bears are large, they'll move more slowly in this kind of forest. With that, we desperately ran deeper into the woods, but how could a human's speed possibly match that of a Tibetan brown bear? The heavy footsteps behind me grew closer and closer, and I could even smell the foul stench mixed with the scent of blood. At the critical moment, Dad suddenly turned around, aiming his hunting rifle at the leading Tibetan brown bear's eye. Bang! The bullet hit the bear's eye with precision, and the Tibetan brown bear let out an ear-splitting roar of pain, temporarily halting its pursuit. "Hurry, climb the tree," Dad shouted. Fortunately, my brother and I grew up in these mountains and forests, so climbing trees was a basic skill. Almost instinctively, we quickly scrambled up the nearest large tree. Mom was a bit slower. Just as she was about to reach a branch, a bear's paw suddenly swiped at her. "Ah!" Mom screamed in agony as a large chunk of flesh was torn from her calf. "Honey!" Dad's eyes widened with fury as he fired another shot. The bullet struck the Tibetan blue bear in the shoulder, causing it only to stagger slightly. All 4 of us managed to climb onto the tree, but the danger was far from over. The 2 Tibetan brown bears began taking turns ramming the tree trunk, causing the sturdy tree to shake violently under their force. "This can't go on." Dad checked his hunting rifle, his expression grim. "We only have 1 bullet left." My younger brother clung tightly to the tree trunk, his face pale. "Sis, are we going to die?" Just as I was about to comfort him, I suddenly heard the sound of police sirens in the distance. "The patrol is here," Mom smiled weakly. "Fortunately, I called the police when I was inside the house, although I knew they might arrive slowly. At least there was hope. "Over here, help," we shouted in unison. The sound of sirens grew closer, accompanied by chaotic footsteps and shouts. Several fully armed police officers appeared in view, and upon seeing the Tibetan blue bear under the tree, they immediately raised their guns. Bang, bang, the deafening gunshots echoed through the mountain forest. The Tibetan blue bear, startled by the gunfire, retreated temporarily. Immediately after, the officers fired tranquilizer darts. Whoosh! 2 tranquilizer darts hit the Tibetan blue bear with pinpoint accuracy. The giant bear swayed a few times before finally collapsing to the ground with a thud. "We're saved." My legs were still trembling as I climbed down from the tree. Medical personnel immediately bandaged Mom's wounds, while the police officers gathered information from us, those 3 people. Dad pointed toward the wreckage of the RV and explained the earlier situation to the officers. Soon, an officer reported that they had found 2 mutilated bodies and 1 person who was severely injured. The blonde-haired man was already on the brink of death when he was carried over on a stretcher. When he saw us, a flash of hatred flickered in his eyes. "You're still alive," the police officer said coldly. "You are suspected of attempted murder and are now under arrest." Our family got into the police car, as they said they needed to gather more information. On the way back, the police car's radio was broadcasting the news. It is reported that 3 internet celebrity streamers, in order to gain attention, deliberately provoked a bear to attack people. Currently, 2 have died, and 1 is seriously injured. Looking at my family members beside me, safe and sound, I whispered with relief, "Thank goodness, it's all over." 3 months later. The Municipal Intermediate People's Court was packed to capacity. Our family sat in the plaintiff's seats, watching the yellow-haired man being escorted in by the bailiffs. One of his legs had been amputated, and his face still bore the hideous scars left by severe injuries. "All rise." With the clerk's announcement, the presiding judge solemnly entered the courtroom. The prosecutor read the indictment with resounding force. In order to gain online attention, the defendant, John, conspired with 2 deceased suspects to meticulously plan this shocking live-streamed incident of a Tibetan brown bear attacking a person. During the trial, the yellow-haired man initially attempted to defend himself, claiming it was merely an accident. However, when the prosecutor played the chat records and videos saved on his phone, his lies were completely exposed. "Your Honor," Dad spoke as the victim's representative, his voice choked with emotion. "If it weren't for my daughter's quick thinking, our entire family would have already." The judge then delivered the verdict in court. The defendant, John Mumu, is found guilty of intentional homicide and endangering public safety. For these multiple offenses, he is sentenced to life imprisonment and deprived of political rights for life. The public gallery erupted in enthusiastic applause. I tightly held my family's hands, tears glistening in each other's eyes. As we walked out of the courthouse, the sunlight was dazzlingly bright. In this lifetime, I have finally protected my family. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. After the zombies arrived, both my sister and I developed special abilities. Between metal manipulation and healing powers, she decisively chose the more formidable former, while I was forced to take up healing. When she led teams to scavenge supplies, I stayed at the base's medical station enjoying the air conditioning. While she was fighting through mountains of corpses and seas of blood, I was sleeping in the arms of the base leader. Her clothes were stained with blood and brain matter, while I remained forever in pristine white, untouched by a single speck of dust. In the end, she pushed me into the horde of zombies. When I opened my eyes again, my sister and I had been reborn on the day we were to choose our supernatural abilities. She quickly chose the healing ability. "It's my turn to enjoy the good life this time." I smiled and said nothing. Why did she think the medical station's air conditioning was never turned off? And where did all those people who mysteriously disappeared from the base go? Wait, I changed my mind. I want the healing ability. Just as I was about to obtain the pure white crystal nucleus representing the power of healing, my sister suddenly changed her mind. I knew she had also been reborn, but it seemed she didn't realize I had been reborn too. It was the second day of the zombie outbreak, and we found the corpse of a researcher in the apartment hallway. The body had already turned cold, with a damaged briefcase lying beside it. We quietly carried the case back to our shared apartment and easily opened it. Inside were 2 crystal cores, 1 gold and 1 white, accompanied by an instruction manual. They represented metal manipulation and healing abilities respectively. In our previous life, my sister firmly believed that metal manipulation was the ultimate power. Possessing it was like holding the script for the female lead in an apocalyptic drama. While leaving the utterly non-offensive healing ability to me, they glorified it as protection for my sake. But when I became the little princess of the base in appearance, she couldn't bear to spend her days fighting zombies. The milk she could barely afford after several missions, I could obtain effortlessly with just a flick of my finger. Even the base leader, Frank, became one of my devoted admirers. Such vastly different treatment finally shattered her hypocritical facade. "Susan, how dare you? I've risked my life for the base countless times. Clearly my contributions are greater. Why do you get the leader's favor? Truth be told, I'm not doing well, nor do I care for anyone's favor. My sister and I are both orphans. We've relied on each other since childhood." So my instinctive thought was to explain, but the person before me was already blinded by the flames of jealousy, and my tragic death was, to her, the most satisfying solution. In the end, my own sister pushed me off the high wall of the base without hesitation. Beyond the high walls, there were continuous roars and densely packed zombies. Fear arrived before the pain, then came the excruciating agony of limbs and skin being devoured all over the body. If I could do it all over again, I would definitely drag her down to hell with me. When I opened my eyes again, my sister and I had been reborn on the day we were to choose our supernatural abilities. I lowered my head. recalling the experiences of my past life, and for a moment didn't respond to her request for the healing ability, but she misunderstood it as my unwillingness to give it to her. This only strengthened her belief that the healing ability was an exceptionally rare and valuable thing. Without hesitation, she excitedly lunged at me, snatched the crystal core, and swallowed it whole. It's finally my turn to enjoy the good life. You can just keep dealing with those disgusting things every day. I quickly dodged away from her and cautiously approached the box. Only one golden crystal core remained inside, but unlike her, I didn't swallow it directly. Instead, I wrapped it in a clean cloth and placed it against my chest, closest to my heart. In my previous life, with my healing abilities, I came into contact with numerous scientific achievements related to viruses. Among them was the origin and purpose of these two crystal cores. There was also one potentially fatal precaution to note. But my sister didn't know, seeing that I didn't consume it immediately but reluctantly put away the crystal core instead. Bella's expression grew even more smug. Don't worry, little sister, once I become famous in the base, I'll make sure to take good care of you. She ground out the word care through clenched teeth, her widened eyes practically devouring me on the spot with their intensity. It seems life at the base will be quite interesting from now on. Both she and I were reborn only after death. What a pity, my foolish sister. She doesn't seem to know why she died. It's okay, as long as I know. Sister, we have plenty of time ahead of us. Early the next morning, Bella was still asleep, but I had already opened my eyes. Carefully, I took out the golden crystal core from the cloth bag, its sharp gleam shimmering in the sunlight. At first glance, it looks no different from yesterday, but upon closer comparison, you can see that the transparent film that originally enveloped the crystal core has disappeared. This membrane had almost fused with the crystal core itself, making it difficult for ordinary people to notice anything unusual. If I hadn't been reborn this time and known the trick in advance, I might have repeated the same mistake. Back then, I was treated as a mobile human-shaped medical tool, healing the wounded tirelessly, rain or shine, day or night, until my energy was exhausted, then restored, only to be depleted again. The extensive use of my abilities rapidly increased my power level, and I gradually began to notice the issues within my own powers. With each use of my ability, I could feel the deterioration of my internal organs more clearly. Later I learned that to prevent theft, researchers had coated the crystal core with a colorless, odorless toxic film. Contact alone would lead to poisoning. The toxicity would only manifest and gradually intensify with the continuous use and development of special abilities. There was no cure, a fight to the death, yet the method to dissolve this film was absurdly simple, that is to maintain a temperature of around 36 degrees Celsius for at least 6 hours without damaging the membrane itself. If Bella chooses oral administration, she cannot avoid the destruction of the membrane by stomach acid, therefore, her death is only a matter of time. I carefully wiped the crystal core through the cloth and, after confirming there was no danger whatsoever, swallowed it. The seemingly hard crystal core melted instantly upon entering the mouth, and a warm current immediately flowed through my limbs, followed by a significant enhancement in perception. I closed my eyes, feeling the changes in my body. When I opened them again, I could already see faint golden lights shimmering in the air. I reached out my hand, focusing my energy. Slowly, a metal needle with a bulging middle and pointed ends took shape in the palm of his hand. With a shift in consciousness, the metal needle instantly dissolved into golden specks, merging into the air. As the zombie virus swept across the globe, Earth's environment underwent drastic changes. Metallic elements began to appear in the air. In the later stages of metal manipulation, users can even freely control all metallic elements, not just those in the air, but also those within the human body. These are also secrets I discovered from the base's classified documents. I'm afraid this is also the reason why Bella worked tirelessly to kill zombies but never received any favor in return. Fear. No leader likes things that are out of control, especially when that thing can threaten them. Moreover, in the post-apocalyptic world, everyone is in danger, and humanity has long perished along with the glorious urban civilization. I stood up and walked to the window, lifting a corner of the curtain. As expected, humanity's light Frank was already on his way. I sat quietly by the side, watching my sister's sleeping face, a face somewhat resembling mine, yet capable of such a detestable expression. Under my eerie gaze, Bella jolted awake from her dream. She swallowed hard, then grew furious at herself for being frightened by me. You're like a dead person. Staring won't help. The healing ability is already mine. Stop deluding yourself. Oh, I did die once, thanks to you, dear sister. My indifferent attitude only fueled her irritation. Before her shrill voice could pierce through the walls, I thoughtfully pointed toward the window. The number of zombies downstairs was no small matter. This scream was no different from a dinner bell in the cafeteria, but she seemed to have misunderstood something. She quickly got out of bed and piled all her meager clothes from the wardrobe onto the bed. Then she tried them on one by one in front of the mirror. Oh, so she was thinking of Frank. In her past life, Frank already possessed supernatural abilities when we first met, but in the end, he couldn't withstand the horde tactics, the enemy had overwhelming numbers, and his abilities were quickly exhausted. He also suffered many injuries during his escape. However, his abilities are different from ours. Ours were artificially activated through crystal cores, pure extracts. They are one of a kind. There is only one healing ability user in the world, and only one metal ability user. And he awakened his ability only after being infected with the zombie virus. Indeed, there is a certain probability of awakening abilities upon infection with the zombie virus. Thus, many madmen have thrown themselves into it one after another, unwilling to remain subordinate or to live in ignominy, shouting that it's better to take a gamble than to live a cowardly life. Who knows? Maybe a bicycle could turn into a motorcycle. In the end, most of these people became part of the zombie horde. The facts prove, if you don't have the diamond drill, don't take on the porcelain job. This Frank really has something to him. He's a tough character. While lost in thought, Bella finally picked out her clothes and hesitated for a moment before speaking. Little sister, let's hurry out to find food. In our past life, it was during our search for food that we unexpectedly saved him from being chased by zombies. Of course, she wanted to go alone, so she could monopolize the future base leader's favor. In her past life, she certainly could have, but now, she had no choice but to drag me along, because the one who now possesses powerful metal abilities, it's me. There was a moderately sized supermarket near the apartment, located in a remote area with sparse foot traffic, so it became our first choice in our previous life. That's also where we saved Frank. The journey went smoothly, with almost no direct encounters with zombies. Bella hid behind me the entire time, trembling like a quail. She even nearly screamed at the sight of a severed leg, so I quickly grabbed a piece of torn clothing from the ground and stuffed it into her mouth. I spoke with a harsh tone. If you want to die, go die somewhere far away, don't drag me into it. I knew she was useless, but I didn't expect her to be this useless. After entering the supermarket, I stealthily used my ability to transform a cone and pierce the zombie's forehead. Then I reverted the cone back to its elemental state. After cleaning up, I headed straight to the daily necessities section and grabbed a waterproof hiking backpack. I was picking out medicine while she stood by the door, looking around and waiting for Frank. I was scavenging for food, and she changed her waiting posture. By the time I had my backpack ready for the return trip, she had already switched to her fourth pose. Thinking it was attractive, idiot, I spoke up. Looks like he's not coming. I'm leaving first, suit yourself. She ignored me. I let out a cold laugh and turned away without hesitation, yet the very next second, a disheveled figure could be seen fleeing in the distance, running straight toward the supermarket. There were still quite a few zombies following behind. TSK, what bad luck. Frank was no good, but he shouldn't die so easily either. Just as he was about to be caught, I silently conjured silver needles to pierce the heads of the zombies closest to him. As he gradually increased the distance, I conjured metal blocks on the ground to trip him up, never tired of it. By the time he reached the supermarket, I had already eliminated most of the zombies behind him. Seeing no danger, Bella, who had been too scared to make a sound, hurriedly jumped out to offer her help. Are you okay? Let me heal your wounds. She used her healing ability to treat most of Frank's injuries. The man's eyes immediately lit up with amazement, and with ambition and greed. Not only because of the rare ability, but also because of the two's outstanding appearances, which could rival those of idols in peaceful times. In the apocalypse, fragility and beauty are knives turned against oneself. Yet he turned to me instead, asking if I was the one who had just killed the zombies. Noticing the distraction, Bella shot me a venomous glare. I chuckled and denied it. No, must have been a ghost or something. This denial played right into her sister's hands, who eagerly agreed that it must have been a passerby acting bravely to help. She particularly emphasized that her younger sister was just an ordinary person who couldn't even harm a fly, with no supernatural abilities whatsoever. Under her enthusiastic invitation, Frank seemingly passively yet actually quite willingly followed us back to the apartment. My dear sister, you've truly let the wolf into the house. In his past life, the number of lives he took far exceeded the zombies you've killed. The small apartment was now divided into two separate spaces. With his tall, handsome appearance and subtly ambiguous tone, Frank quickly charmed Bella into complete disorientation, just like how you deceived me in my past life. The two of them cuddled in a corner of the room as if no one else was present, with my sister occasionally casting provocative glances my way. When I opened my backpack to take out the food, she suddenly froze. Indeed, her eyes were only on the man. How could she possibly remember that the original purpose of going to the supermarket was to gather supplies? She leaned into Frank's arms, bossing around. Susan, how can you be so selfish? Do you really plan to hog all the food for yourself? Though Frank frowned, he still spoke gently. Susan, it's fine if you don't like me, but Bella is after all your own sister. You can't just stand by and watch her starve to death, can you? How nauseatingly intimate. You have superpowers, don't you? If you don't want to starve, go find food yourselves. I casually pointed toward the door, too lazy to deal with that despicable couple anymore. I focused on eating the hardtack in my hand, the crunching sound piercing the silence, just as Bella, unable to contain her anger, was about to snatch the food away. Sudden footsteps and growls came from all directions. We were surrounded by zombies, but in no time, the sounds vanished without a trace, as if nothing had ever happened. Knock, knock, knock. A rhythmic knocking sound came from outside the door. I slowed my breathing, focusing intently on the direction of the door, not daring to relax for even a moment. It must be a really powerful superhuman who took care of all the zombies, Bella exclaimed, both shocked and delighted, and before I could grab her hand, she had already opened the door. A young man in white stood outside the door, his soft short hair neatly pressed against his forehead, with a pair of pitch-black eyes that seemed bottomless. Noticing her gaze, the young man smiled slightly, his sculpted features instantly coming to life. I happened to pass by and sense survivors here, so I took care of the zombies for you. Would it be possible to stay for the night? He deliberately enunciated each word, his voice carrying a hint of hoarseness, his smile almost coaxing. Bella suddenly blushed to the tips of her ears and eagerly went to make the bed for him. Of course, the person who should have been sleeping in that bed was originally me. I narrowed my eyes slightly, taking an imperceptible step back as I tried to minimize my presence, yet that person turned and walked toward me, slowly extending a hand. Hello, sister, I'm Leo. Before I could react, Bella immediately threw down the blanket in her hands, swiftly pulled him to the other side to fuss over him, and didn't forget to shoot me a disdainful glance. I smirked lightly and raised my eyes to look at Frank, who was left out on the side. His expression was even gloomier than mine. At first, he tried to pull his sister back, but after a few attempts, he gave up. My sister might as well have written impatience on her face. Leo responded to her with a smile, but his gaze remained fixed on me. Finally, she couldn't hold back any longer and threw the iron rod, still stained with zombie blood, at me from the ground. If it hit me, even a minor wound would instantly turn me into one of those things. The next second, a cold voice spoke. If you don't want this hand, I don't mind crippling it for you. Leo wiped his hand on the curtain as if disgusted, while beside him stood Bella, missing her right hand, with a slender index finger pressed to his lips. He said, "Shh, don't make a sound." She choked back sobs, ultimately not daring to cry aloud, only shedding silent tears as she cast a pleading glance toward Frank. Frank hesitated, but remembering her healing ability, he decided to step in front of her. The scorching flames ignited in his palm, aimed directly at Leo, but Leo seemed oblivious, instead taking step after step toward me. I stood my ground without moving. Our eyes locked. Beneath the calm gaze lay unfathomable undercurrents. With each step he took, the surrounding roars grew louder. At some point, the streets and corridors had already become densely packed with zombies. I've seen him before, in the deepest underground room of the medical station from my past life. There was a person bound by chains as thick as a forearm. Later, he became the Zombie King. It seems highly likely that he has also been reborn, according to the progression in his previous life. Leo should still be a human with special abilities at this point. However, he was being pursued by high-ranking human officials due to his unique powers. His early transformation into the Zombie King this time must have been caused by some unforeseen event. The door panel collapsed with a crash, interrupting my thoughts. Before the zombies could flood in, I decisively smashed the window, and Leo was the first to jump down. Behind me, Bella was screaming like mad. "Susan, are you insane? Hurry up and help block the door." I flashed a bright, mocking smile. "Don't worry, sis, a healing ability user isn't that easy to kill. Sometimes, living is far more terrifying than dying." With those words, I leaped without looking back. "Little zombie, catch your sister steady." Leo moved like lightning, gathering strength for a powerful jump, and caught me firmly in his arms. I wanted to get down and walk on my own, but he held me firmly in place. "Sis, it's been so long. Did you miss me?" He pitifully leaned in close to me, but his eyes couldn't hide their mischief. I sighed helplessly. "It's only been 4 days. The day before my death in my previous life was the last time I saw him, and the next day he successfully broke free from his shackles and escaped. The base was in chaos, and in the midst of it, Bella tied me to the city wall. Today is the second day of my rebirth. All in all, it's only been 4 days. He bit his lower lip, looking quite aggrieved. "It seems sister doesn't want to see me anymore. Fine, I'll leave now then." As he spoke, he was about to put me down, but I suddenly clung to him tighter, like an octopus. Don't think I didn't notice how the previously quiet zombies suddenly all stared at me the moment I was about to touch the ground. brat, daring to threaten me. Leo proudly jostled me upward a bit and swaggered through the crowd of corpses while carrying me, as leisurely as if we were out for a stroll. Under the astonished gazes of the two people upstairs, we gradually walked away. Meeting Leo was purely accidental. That day, while exploring the medical station, I discovered his presence. Humans created the zombie virus and further refined it to extract cores containing supernatural abilities. The abilities awakened by the virus and those artificially extracted are essentially the same. Thus, I keenly sensed that, like me, he possessed healing-related powers. I poked that exquisitely pale face. "Hey, were you locked up here because of your healing abilities too?" He lazily lifted his eyelids, casting a fleeting glance at me with his narrow, peach blossom eyes before closing them again. Handsome looks, but not the best temper. Undeterred, I switched sides and continued poking his face. "You look younger than me, so I'll call you little brother. Little brother, what mistake did you make to get beaten like this? If you were as obedient as your sister, you'd suffer much less." Finally, he couldn't stand my pestering anymore and bared his teeth at me. My ability is regeneration, but anyone who gets close to me doesn't live long. I suggest you get as far away from me as possible." Like a small beast whose tail had been stepped on. Perhaps it was the mutual understanding between healing-type ability users. From then on, I always found opportunities to sneak in and see him, sometimes bringing a steamed bun, a glass of milk, or sometimes a flower. Of course, there were times when I came empty-handed, and then I would just tell him about what was happening outside. From initially being called a busybody to later being affectionately addressed as sister with every word, gradually, Leo and I became familiar with each other. I also learned about those tragic experiences from his words. Unlike me, his regenerative ability is passive. He cannot output his ability like I can, but he can make himself immortal and indestructible. Even if only a head remains, Leo can regrow a complete body. Thus, his flesh and blood were supplied to the human elite to fulfill their dream of immortality. Ordinary superhumans cannot be reinfected with the zombie virus, or they would mutate completely. But Leo is different. His resistance to the virus is remarkably strong, so the elite repeatedly injected the virus into his body to advance vaccine research. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. In the end, he became a half-human, half-zombie king of the undead. Humans are always like this, trying to control what cannot be controlled. In the end, they only reap what they sow. Once a glorious cluster of cities, now only a single building still stands tall in the downtown area. In the penthouse suite at the top of the building, Leo and I sat facing each other. He summoned a few zombie minions to bring a basket of fruit, then picked an apple from it and began peeling. "Big sister, now that I've become the zombie king, I don't have to worry about being captured by them anymore," he said, proudly lifting his chin as if waiting for my praise. "Praise my ass." I rubbed my temples. "So you willingly turned yourself into this half-human, half-ghost mess?" He nodded eagerly like a puppy, as if an invisible fluffy tail were wagging excitedly behind him. My frown deepened. "Didn't you consider what would happen if you failed? What if you became a completely mindless zombie?" After listening to me, the light in his eyes grew brighter, and he eagerly scooted closer to me. "Sister, are you concerned about me? My head hurts so much, I really want to hit someone." Seeing my expression gradually darken, Leo instantly became serious. "I was wrong. I promise I won't do it again. How about you hit me, sister?" His words sounded sincere, but his little actions told a different story. He was practically glued to me. I sighed, pushed his head away, and took the apple from his hand, then quickly stuffed it into his mouth. In his sorrowful gaze, I affectionately ruffled his hair to comfort him. The next second, my expression turned serious again. "Since we've been given a second chance at life, we must never repeat the same mistakes. It's time to clean up those scum who don't deserve to be called human." Those scum refer to the higher-ups in the Dawn base, including Frank. Dawn, what an ironic name. They developed the zombie virus under the banner of human evolution, survival of the fittest, but before the vaccine could be successfully developed, the virus spiraled out of control, so they decided to conduct experiments on living humans. People who mysteriously disappeared from the base were locked underground in the medical station, voluntarily sacrificing themselves for the future of humanity. The air conditioning that remains on indefinitely within the facility is meant to reduce viral activity, and similarly, zombies' movements are restricted in low temperatures, but more importantly, it's to slow down the rate of corpse decay. That's right. In the eyes of the higher-ups, even dead test subjects still hold value. Until the last ounce of value is squeezed out, the test subjects will never find release. Their final resting place was in the stomachs of zombies. Surprised, but this is human nature. It wasn't the apocalypse that destroyed humanity, it was humanity that nurtured the apocalypse. The bloody memories replayed in his mind over and over, and Leo's face darkened. He removed the apple from his mouth. "Sister, we must not let those people go. Whatever you decide to do, I'll cooperate with you. The first thing to do next is to enhance my abilities. Only by being strong yourself can you have a say and avoid being at the mercy of others. Leo obediently summoned a large group of zombie minions, old and young, missing arms or legs. They had it all, but the moment they saw me, they all froze like puppets. I'm here to practice real combat, not to hit training dummies. After I gave Leo a good scolding, he finally behaved a lot better. Although the zombies' movement speed was still much slower than normal, it was barely acceptable. Leo would come to watch my training every day, sticking around like a piece of bubblegum that couldn't be shaken off. Helpless, I had no choice but to let him be. After 2 months of intense training, my mastery of metal manipulation has reached perfection. Without even lifting a hand, I can conjure dozens of silver needles with just a thought. My perception of metal objects within a radius of several miles has reached its limit, allowing me to freely control their movement and shape. I've even managed to construct a completely enclosed metal space. Leo cheered enthusiastically from the sidelines. I patted his head affectionately and said, "Silly child, leave all the brainwork to your sister from now on. Just find a shady spot to stay so they won't notice you." He nodded earnestly in agreement, and then the next day, as I searched for a vehicle in the city, I didn't encounter a single zombie along the way. On the third day, just as I was about to drive out of the city, a horde of zombies suddenly appeared. They didn't try to bite me, they simply blocked my path. I swiftly cleared the roadblock. On the 7th day, at the entrance of the base, I spotted a familiar face among the crowd waiting to enter, as expected, while the armed guard at the door wasn't paying attention. I grabbed his ear and quickly dragged him to an inconspicuous corner. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Leo looked at me with teary eyes, his eyelids reddened. I sneered but still let go. Stop pretending, zombies don't feel pain. Seeing his pitiful act exposed, he had no choice but to wipe away his tears, though the word unfair was practically written all over his face. I sighed, rubbing my forehead. I didn't let you come for your own good. Those people have been searching for you. I'm afraid you wouldn't even make it past the first layer of the base's security check. It's practically delivering yourself to the enemy from 1,000 miles away, a small gift with great sentiment, but I didn't say it out loud, afraid of hurting the kid's self-esteem. He pouted, still unwilling to back down. What if that person does something bad to you again? I'm afraid I won't make it in time to save you. Who is it? I was puzzled for a second, then immediately realized. The kid is jealous. You mean that bastard Frank? Don't worry, sis won't let him lay a finger on me. What if we run into them? Then we'll chop them up. After much persuasion, we finally managed to send this troublesome one away. Since I've never exposed my supernatural abilities in front of Frank, he won't go all out to track me down, at least not yet. I entered the base without any obstacles. I hadn't gone far when I ran into an acquaintance. Talk about bad luck. Before the other person noticed me, I quickly covered half my face with a scarf and disappeared into the crowd. Bella in a white dress brushed past me. It hadn't been long, yet she had already become skin and bones, as if a gust of wind could blow her away. Following behind her was a large group of burly bodyguards, creating a stark contrast. Due to the enhancement of my abilities, I could now clearly distinguish between ordinary people and those with special powers. Those are not ordinary superhumans, but none of them can defeat me anyway. In my previous life, although my movements were restricted, Frank never had so many people supervising me simultaneously. My pragmatism earned me considerable freedom from him. It seems that during the months I was away, my dear sister must have caused quite a bit of trouble. Stop dawdling, move faster. If the supermarket boss punishes us later, we won't let you off easy either. One of the burly men roughly shoved Bella, who was still picking fruits at the stall. What's there to pick? You're just a cheap whore ridden by thousands. Don't think you're any better just because you've hooked up with the boss. What's so great about healing powers? You'll still be locked up for experiments, mockery, insults, disdain, contempt, humiliation. Sister, this is what I once endured, and now it's your turn to face it. I wonder how you're feeling now. You must be very happy to have finally won Frank's favor. I didn't waste any more time and decisively turned to walk into the dilapidated alley. The person behind me was roughly pushed to the ground, while my steps were light and bright. We all have our own futures, sister. Open your eyes wide and watch carefully. This is how a true female lead in the apocalypse should be. When I arrived, the sky was still bright, which wasn't ideal for sneaking around, so I wandered through the alleys of the slums for a long time, waiting for nightfall. This was the most poorly guarded area in the entire base. Most of the people living here are ordinary individuals without power or influence, primarily the elderly, children, or those with disabilities. However, it's rare to see young men or women. The former are mostly used as bait to lure zombies, ending up devoured, or are conscripted to do the hardest and most exhausting labor in the base. The unlucky ones become test subjects, unable to live or die. As for the young women, Their fate won't be much better than Bella's, ultimately ending up as part of the zombie horde kept by the higher-ups. To facilitate research, those in power actively maintain a group of zombies specifically for experimentation. At the same time, to better preserve the zombies' vitality, a constant supply of fresh flesh and blood is required. There was a constant stream of missing persons. Perhaps some had already noticed the anomalies, but what could they do? The sun rose as usual. And before the darkness consumed them, they pretended everything was still bright. Everyone was deceiving themselves. I rehearsed the route of action over and over in my mind until I was certain there wasn't the slightest room for error, by which time the thick night had already enveloped the entire land. In my previous life, I had attempted to escape, so I secretly memorized the coverage of all surveillance cameras in the base. But my abilities were too weak, and with the poison acting up, I had no choice but to give up. This time, I smoothly avoided all surveillance and successfully infiltrated Frank's room. He was extremely sharp, regaining full awareness the moment he woke, even from sleep. A second on the battlefield is the difference between life and death. It's you. He was too late. I controlled the blade to cut off his tongue, preventing his screams from attracting unnecessary trouble. At the same time, 4 metal spikes, each as thick as a calf, materialized and pinned him to the bed, completely severing the tendons in his hands and feet. My voice seemed laced with venom. Begging will only make me crueler. Did you show mercy when those innocent people knelt and pleaded not to be used as test subjects? Frank stared at me with frenzied eyes, his entire body trembling uncontrollably, even losing control of his bladder. See, whether it's the victim or the perpetrator, their instinctive reactions when faced with a life-threatening situation are exactly the same. The villain wielding a butcher's knife is also a coward who's fierce in appearance but weak at heart. With a smile playing at the corners of my lips, I said, "By the way, the metal manipulator is indeed me. Congratulations on guessing right. So, what reward should I give you? How about calling a little friend to liven things up?" With that, I opened the window of his bedroom, and a zombie eagle flew in from outside. As my abilities advanced, Leo wasn't idle either. He had developed his psychic powers to an extremely high level, capable of freely controlling anything infected by the virus. When he wasn't around, he would send messages to me through this eagle. I reached out my hand, and the zombie eagle obediently retracted its claws, perching gently on my left forearm. "You've worked hard all the way, baby, now it's mealtime." As the words fell, the zombie eagle immediately reverted to its cruel and bloodthirsty nature, launching a one-sided assault on Frank lying on the bed. After the buffet ended, his chest was covered with marks left by the bird's beak, and his internal organs were mostly hollowed out. Lying on the bed, barely able to move, he gasped for breath, more air going in than coming out. But I'm a cautious person, so I made sure he had stopped breathing before specifically removing his head and letting the zombie eagle carry it back. Sigh. I hope Leo won't be too jealous when he sees this. Next stop, Bella's room. I entered her room through the window. She hadn't even locked it, saving me the trouble of breaking in forcefully. A crescent moon hung in the sky, and under the silver moonlight, a figure sat upright on the bed. "I've been waiting for you for a long time, little sister." Bella spoke with apparent calm, but the faint tremor in her voice didn't escape my notice. I raised an eyebrow, signaling for her to continue. "Let the show begin." Tears instantly welled up in her eyes, slowly trickling down her gaunt cheeks. "Sister, since you've managed to come here, you must be able to save me, right?" She looked at me expectantly for an answer. I gave a slight nod, seeing my guard relax. She imperceptibly shifted backward slightly and continued pouring out her grievances to me. I leaned against the wall boredly, arms crossed. Before she could press the button, I ghostly teleported behind her, simultaneously slicing off her tongue in both hands. "This button looks familiar. Why don't you tell me what it's for, sis?" I asked with a hollow smile. Even at this point, she still refuses to let me go. Once this button is pressed, indestructible isolation walls will rise at all exits of this room, trapping me inside. By the time reinforcements from the higher-ups arrive, I'm afraid escaping won't be so easy, but I know her too well. She and I had long reached the point of no return. "Don't worry, Frank has already gone ahead. You'll be joining him soon. By the way, do you know why someone of his high rank would appear near the apartment?" I leaned close to her ear and enunciated each word clearly. "Because he was hunting the person who stole the crystal core, and from the very first moment you saw him, you exposed your supernatural ability." Bella's eyes widened in disbelief, her entire face smeared with tears, snot, and sticky blood. Then, as if mocking herself, she collapsed to the ground, silently alternating between sobbing and laughing. She laughs because Frank is finally dead, and she no longer has to suffer, yet she cries because I didn't suffer. Once again, she lost to me. I crouched down to meet her gaze. "Sister, do you know why you lost? Because all you see is yourself. You're so self-righteous, sister, you're too arrogant." Because you disdain everything, you look down on everyone, so you can't see the schemes in others' hearts, nor the malice beneath the hypocrisy. What you've always sought was never Frank's love, but supreme power and status. You and those beasts in human skin are truly the same kind. In the end, I didn't torment her excessively, I gave her a quick death instead. Consider it my farewell to the last family I had in this world. She could abandon her humanity without a second thought, but I couldn't. I will break the curse of the Dragon Slayer becoming the dragon, because I am human. After dealing with Frank, I extended my consciousness to cover the entire base. Metal cages rose one after another around the residences of the base's high-ranking officials, medical stations, and gathering places for superhumans. Under the merciless moonlight, they gleamed with a cold metallic sheen, according to memories from a past life. The lowest level beneath the medical station was a corpse pit, a place where zombies were bred and kept, to enhance defense. The entire medical station was constructed from metal, which coincidentally provided me with tremendous convenience. I slowly extended my hand, separating the surviving normal humans in the laboratory along with the entire containment chamber and placing them far from the battlefield. Then, with my fingers spread wide, I clenched my fist forcefully, causing all the floors between the medical station's levels to vanish instantly. The remaining researchers inside plummeted straight to the lowest level, becoming food for the zombies. After I finished dealing with the zombies in the pit, Leo arrived just in time. Behind me stretched an endless army of zombie eagles. I curled my lips into a smile. Good, they've arrived just in time. In roughly half an hour, those damned creatures were reduced to mere skeletons. The battle ended before the war horns could even sound. I reached up my hand again, and all the metal cages vanished in an instant. It's late at night, and I'm feeling a bit sleepy. I stretched and sprawled casually onto Leo's back. I'm going to sleep. Good night. This was the most peaceful sleep I've ever had, because the mastermind and accomplices of this disaster have already reported to the underworld, because he was there. Another half-month passed. Dawn Base. Oh no. It should now be called Hope Base. There was a new human leader there. Who it is doesn't matter, and I don't care. In a way, having lived through 2 lifetimes, I've become quite indifferent, even cold. I don't feel a strong sense of identification or belonging toward any particular individual. Everything I do is simply fulfilling the last responsibilities of being human. A sunny morning, I sent an invitation to the base, inviting them to witness my death, although they thought it might be a trap. They still sent quite a few people to observe. A steep cliff, with roaring, churning magma below. I trapped all the invited guests in metal cages to prevent them from being attacked by zombies. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, I wildly unleashed my supernatural pressure outward. Then I leaped into the air. Following closely was a figure who had hurried over, jumping down without hesitation. A tremendous impact sound came from the magma, sparks flying everywhere, the moment I jumped down. The metal cage instantly vanished. Zombies worldwide seemed to be under an immense summoning, frenziedly surging toward this place. Then one after another, they fell into the scorching magma, vanishing without a trace. The people at the base were so shocked they couldn't close their mouths, until the last zombie on Earth fell into the lava. With this, the apocalyptic era came to an end. Humanity entered a new era, the age of superpowers. Extra chapter. As I was falling, I suddenly saw a figure charging forward without hesitation. Fool, didn't I tell you to stay put? Countless splashes of magma and rock fragments were flying through the air, and the two of them held each other tightly. 1 second before falling into the magma, an airtight metal space abruptly appeared, completely protecting the two inside. Actually, in my previous life, I discovered the most important secret. Zombies possess a tendency toward strength. Simply put, the stronger the ability user, the more they attract zombies. This is because superhumans and zombies share the same origin, and that common source is the zombie virus. Superhumans kill zombies, and zombies devour superhumans. The two mutually restrain each other. Looking across the entire planet, I am undoubtedly the strongest superhuman. Therefore, it must be me, and only I have the capability to eliminate all zombies in one go. Except for that silly boy Leo, I couldn't bear to see him die, so I secretly planned this grand performance, letting everyone witness my sacrifice. Only then could I completely disappear and retreat to the mountains with that silly boy. Originally, this act only required me alone. I don't know where he got the news from. He actually jumped down after me. All right, if we're putting on a show, let's go all the way. This little lover's drama, where the woman went crazy and jumped into the lava and the man passionately followed in a tragic love story, finally came to a perfect conclusion. Decades later, on a deserted island, I stood in front of the chicken coop, fuming with rage. Leo quickly darted from behind the house to stand before me, blinking innocently. Sis, I didn't steal and eat those 2 chickens. It has nothing to do with me. I closed my eyes, my temples throbbing. At least wipe the chicken feathers from the corner of your mouth before making excuses. Damn it, I can't take it anymore. Try stealing food again. Go ahead, try it. I grabbed a broom and chased him all over the mountain. I'm sorry. I'll do it again. Leo ran all over the mountain as I chased him. Although we're getting on in years, the genetic modifications have altered our bodies, extending our lifespan significantly. Perhaps in 50 years, when no one else on Earth remembers us, we will return to human society, when one day you see a handsome young man who looks like a college student running wildly ahead, chased by a stunningly beautiful woman with lips like cherry blossoms and teeth like pearls, radiant as a lotus emerging from water, that might very well be us passing you by. After hearing the second story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. The apocalypse arrived, and some people awakened supernatural abilities. As for me, the ability I awakened was comedy. I originally thought this was a completely useless ability, but never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that in the end, it would be me who turned the tide and saved all of humanity. This time, I'm setting the record straight for comedy. Who says comedy is useless? What's your name? In the dust-filled ruins, a girl in tight-fitting combat attire asked me with an imposing air. Looking down from above, Bob, I swallowed hard, getting up from the ground, answering truthfully, ordinary person, or an ability user. The girl pulled out a long blade that had materialized out of nowhere from the head of a massive mutant beast beneath her feet, drawing forth a stream of crimson juice. The girl flicked her blade to shake off the blood, painting eerie plum blossoms on the ground. Ordinary person, for some reason. I felt too embarrassed to admit that I was actually an ability user. Oh, the girl jumped down from the mutant beast's head, landing steadily before walking toward me. She twirled her blade with a flourish, wearing an expression that saw right through me. An ordinary person surviving this long against a mutant beast. I recalled my earlier ordeal of being chased, thanks to my enhanced physical abilities after awakening. I had indeed managed to hold out for quite a while under this beast's attacks. A normal person would have been crushed in one slap. Alright, actually, I'm an ability user, I sighed helplessly and admitted. Since the other party already had an idea, there was no use in denying it. Great, the girl said to me. My name is Kathy. Our organization is recruiting. Join us. Huh, what? I was stunned, not quite processing it. By the way, what's your ability? Comedy. As the apocalypse arrived, nations fell one after another under the tide of beasts. The order of human society was shattered by the overwhelming power of the mutated creatures, leaving everyone in fear for their lives. To survive, many chose to band together for warmth, and countless organizations sprang up like mushrooms after rain. The organization Kathy invited me to join was called the Supremes, as the name suggests. The people in this group were all incredibly powerful beings who surpassed human limits. Members of the organization all had uniquely creative nicknames, like Wind Spirit Tom, Giantess Anna, and me, Comedy Bob. Of course, earning this nickname first required passing the test to qualify for joining this enigmatic organization. Bob, age 25, from City S, Province X, in our country before the apocalypse. Right, yeah, facing the assessment personnel sent by the organization. I truthfully answered with my information, both parents deceased. Grew up in an orphanage since childhood, left the orphanage at 18 to fend for myself in society, worked as a delivery rider, courier, and waiter, then made a living by doing odd jobs until the apocalypse arrived. Yeah, superpower is, his comedy. Yeah, wait, hold on a sec. The examiner frowned and pulled Kathy aside, whispering, I didn't need to hear to know what they were saying. Definitely something about me being deadweight, my ability being useless, blah blah blah. I shrugged nonchalantly. It didn't matter anyway. Being laughed at was nothing new to me. After discussing for a while, the two of them walked over. All right then, Bob, demonstrate your ability, the examiner said sternly, looking straight at me. Are you sure? Confirmed. Really confirmed. Confirmed. The examiner hesitated slightly. Are you absolutely sure? Then I'm not sure. The examiner seemed unsettled by my question and glanced at Kathy beside him. Stop the nonsense. Kathy punched me on the shoulder and said coldly, just use it when I tell you to. Hiss. I yelped in pain. She looked slender and delicate, yet her strength was unexpectedly fierce. Hurry up. Kathy glanced at her watch and urged impatiently. I closed my eyes, focused my mind, and channeled that mysterious power within me. Having learned from past mistakes, Kathy immediately jogged away. I suddenly opened my eyes. Buzz. The examiner was intimidated by my aura. Then they burst into uproarious laughter with a p sound. He laughed so hard he doubled over and rolled on the ground. Ha ha, I can't take it anymore. Ah ha ha, I'm gonna die laughing. I was afraid the other person might laugh themselves unconscious, so I stopped using my ability. The examiner paused. caught their breath, and then continued pointing at me while laughing uncontrollably. I possessed a powerful comedic ability, and the examiner recognized my talent, allowing me to pass the assessment, though in reality, it was Kathy who threatened them into letting me pass. I boarded the armored vehicle dispatched by the organization with Kathy and the examiner, leaving the city that had been reduced to ruins by the mutant beasts, heading toward the base. Looking back, the once bustling city was now devoid of any signs of life. Only the occasional roars of beasts echoed in the sky, and strange figures darted through the ruins. A wave of sorrow washed over me. These vile beasts didn't treat humans as food but as toys to torment at will. Each organization was like a fragile boat in a vast ocean, teetering on the brink of collapse at any moment. Could the united efforts of the Awakened really save humanity? The journey to the organization's base was not without its challenges. Across the endless wilderness, the armored vehicle sped along. Boom, the vehicle shook violently, and I slammed hard against the door, letting out a pained cry. A tiger-shaped mutant beast covered in scars and sporting two long fangs suddenly charged over, slamming hard into the armored vehicle with enough force to nearly flip the multi-ton vehicle onto its side. But that wasn't all. The tiger mutant's charge seemed to sound the horn of attack, as fierce mutant beasts began emerging from all directions, rushing toward the armored vehicle. A beast-tied thud sounds came from the roof of the vehicle. There are displays on the driver's and passenger seats, allowing a clear view of the surroundings on the roof and around the vehicle. Just now, a powerful kangaroo mutant leaped from over 10 meters away and landed directly on the armored vehicle's roof. Drive at maximum speed, I'll handle this. Kathy opened the car window and flipped upward, landing on the roof. With a swift motion of her right hand, Kathy grasped a long blade that materialized out of thin air and decapitated the kangaroo mutant beast in a single slash. However, this mini beast-tide contained dozens of mutant creatures, and the situation was far from over. The armored vehicle raced across the wilderness at full throttle, but the mutant beasts were just as fast, keeping up. From a distance above, it looked like several straight lines chasing a black duck. A few minutes later, the mutant beasts finally caught up to the armored vehicle. One after another, the mutant beasts changed their attack strategy, all charging toward Kathy. Kathy swung her blade relentlessly, slaying one ferocious mutant beast after another with domineering force. Clang, with a single strike, Kathy cleaved a pangolin-like mutant with a hardened shell clean in two. Kathy glanced at her blade. It was chipped. She discarded the longsword and clenched her right fist, summoning a brand new blade into her grasp. I will slay every last one of these mutated beasts in this world. A painful memory flashed through Kathy's mind, her eyes turning red, gripping her sword with both hands. Her fighting spirit blazed fiercely. One woman holds the pass. 10,000 beasts shall not pass. I'll go help her. I was influenced by Kathy's words, feeling my blood boiling with excitement, eager to go out and show my skills. But Sam, the examiner sitting beside me, stopped me. First, develop your ability properly, don't cause trouble. Then he rolled down the window and climbed onto the roof of the vehicle. Woof woof. Sam opened his mouth and unleashed a series of sonic waves, blasting the mutant beasts away or even reducing them to bloody mist. Sonic Ken and Sam. While the two powerhouses were fighting bloody battles, I huddled in my seat, thinking that since my ability wouldn't be of much use anyway, I might as well continue being the mascot. After about 10 minutes or so, the wave of miniature beast-tide was utterly decimated, and the surviving beasts finally gave up, actively distancing themselves from the armored vehicle. Sam returned to the vehicle, panting heavily, wiping the sweat and blood from his face. Haven't fought such an intense battle in a long time. That was exhilarating. I stared blankly at the real-time footage on the high-definition display. On the roof of the car, under the blood-red sunset, a gentle breeze stirred Kathy's jet-black hair, making it flutter lightly. She stood with a knife in hand, vigilant of her surroundings, her body splattered with bloodstains, like a proud and blooming crimson rose. So badass. At this moment, my heart felt as if it had been scorched, burning with an intense heat. After several hours of the armored vehicle moving at full speed, we finally arrived at a certain ruin in the eastern district of J City. Sam extended his right hand out of the car window and made a gesture toward a concealed surveillance camera nearby. The ground ahead split open on both sides, revealing a straight, downward-sloping, spacious driveway. The base of the Divine One's organization was actually built underground. The underground base covers a vast area, equipped with all kinds of living and recreational facilities, and even has fields for growing crops, resembling a self-sufficient underground town. From Sam's introduction, I learned that many ordinary people were still being sheltered here. The armored vehicle headed toward a prominent hemispherical building, which served as the living quarters for the base's superhumans. I'll go file his information. He's all yours now. After getting off the armored vehicle, Sam said to Kathy, "Sure." Kathy nodded coldly, then Sam turned to me, patted my right shoulder, and said with a smile, "Welcome to our big family." "Yeah, I opened my mouth, my emotions surging, unsure of what to say, and could only respond with that single word. I had been struggling to survive alone in the apocalypse, constantly on edge, but now I have companions. Kathy led me into the dormitory area, and as we continued walking, we attracted numerous glances along the way. Who is this guy, from the residential area? Damn, I can actually walk this close to Kathy, the most beautiful girl in our base. What incredible luck with women. Hey, a new face, must have been picked up from outside. I heard murmurs of discussion. Don't mind them, Kathy said coldly. I found that this girl's personality didn't match her name at all. She had an icy demeanor, always looking unhappy, with an air of keeping people at arm's length. Kathy, a flirtatious call came. I followed the sound and saw a tall, thin young man and a baby-faced, chubby guy walking toward us. The voice had just come from the tall, thin young man. The two swaggered over and blocked the path in front of Kathy and me. The tall, lanky young man held a bunch of colorful wildflowers, while the chubby one carried an oversized bag of potato chips. From the murmurs around us, I learned these two were Giant Mary and Hardened David. Mary, Kathy. David, crunch crunch, Mary, I saw some beautiful wildflowers during this mission. David, crunch crunch, Mary, I picked these one by one. David, crunch crunch, stop fucking eating. Mary angrily shouted at David, who was noisily munching on chips beside her. Oh, slurp 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 slurp. David sucked each of his 5 chip-grabbing fingers clean. Mary took a deep breath and readjusted her emotions. I picked these flowers one by one especially for you. Here, don't dislike them. Mary smiled and handed the flowers to Kathy. Kathy gave her a cold look, neither reaching out to take the flowers nor responding. Why are you always so cold to me, Kathy? Having been shut out and with the snickers of those around her, Mary felt embarrassed and unable to back down. I've told you many times, don't call me that. Kathy finally spoke, her pretty face stern. I sensed the atmosphere was off, so I stealthily tipped 2 steps to the right, trying to distance myself from the trouble. Unexpectedly, Kathy reached out and pulled me back. Seeing this, Mary narrowed her eyes, looked at me, and said in a chilling tone, "Oh, I really didn't notice there was someone standing here. Who are you?" "Me, I'm Bob." I pointed at myself and replied, "So who is Bob, and where did he come from?" Mary curled one corner of her lips, taunting. Kathy extended her right arm in front of me, saying coldly, "Move aside." Mary glanced around, noticing everyone's attention was drawn to them. Unable to make a scene, she reluctantly stepped aside. "Let's go." Kathy spoke up and led me to continue registering for accommodation. After walking a short distance, I suddenly felt a chill down my spine and glanced back. Mary smiled at me and made a throat-slitting gesture with her right hand. Beauty brings disaster. The night was deep, and as I lay on my single dormitory bed, recalling the events of the day, I couldn't help but feel a surge of sorrow. Giant Mary, just hearing the name you could tell she was a tough character not to be trifled with. Life is truly full of hardships. Whatever, who isn't an ability user these days? If he really wants to kill me, I'll make sure to take a chunk out of him first. I clenched my fist. The years I've spent fighting mutated beasts alone out there weren't for nothing. In a daze, I was about to drift into sleep. Knock, knock, knock. A knock sounded at the door. "Who is it?" I grumbled. Having just managed to fall asleep, a cold voice sounded from outside the door. I rubbed my eyes and got up to open the door. Sure enough, it was Kathy, sleeping. Not entirely. Kathy's lips twitched a couple of times before she sighed. "Come out for some fresh air with me." I initially wanted to refuse. Being alone together late at night wasn't a good look, but noticing her unusual mood, I worried something might happen and reluctantly agreed, at Kathy's invitation. I joined her on a rooftop to gaze at the starry sky. The Milky Way stretched across the night sky like a silvery ribbon, with stars sparkling like gemstones embedded in the dark canvas. Even as the apocalypse arrived, only the stars remained unchanged. What a beautiful night sky. I initiated the conversation. "Right around this time, my parents were killed by mutated beasts," Kathy suddenly said. "I'm an orphan." "I don't have parents," Kathy choked up. But I truly couldn't empathize with her on this matter. "Use your ability on me." Kathy looked into my eyes with a serious expression. "What?" I was taken aback. I want to laugh. All right. I activated my comedy ability on Kathy, though it had no offensive power. Making someone laugh was still no problem. Ha ha ha. Kathy burst into laughter, her smile utterly captivating. To the other members of the organization, witnessing this smile would be considered extremely lucky. Thank you. Kathy wiped away the tears from laughing. In the following conversation, I learned that Kathy was known as the Ice Queen within the base and rarely smiled, but before the apocalypse, she had actually been a cheerful and optimistic girl, until she witnessed her parents being brutally killed by mutated beasts. Later, she also failed to protect her younger sister, who was taken away by the creatures. To this day, her sister's whereabouts remain unknown. And whether she's alive or dead is uncertain. By the way, what's the name of your ability? I remember you can summon long swords out of thin air, right? That's right. I can create cold weapons like swords, spears, and blades. As Kathy spoke, she clenched her right hand, and a staff materialized out of thin air, just like this. So what's the name of this ability? Creation, God of War. I fell silent. This conversation was officially dead. War Goddess Kathy, damn, what an imposing name. In comparison, what the hell is Funny Bob supposed to be? You could actually change your nickname. Kathy seemed to notice my embarrassment and comforted me. For example, Joke Bob, thanks, but you really don't have to comfort me in the future. Kathy puffed her cheeks. I'm really not good at comforting people, and I rarely laugh, so I actually quite enjoy spending time with you, because my superpower is being funny, right? I chuckled. Kathy glanced at me and said, actually, sometimes you're pretty funny even without using your powers. I sighed. Another dead-end conversation. Girl, the next day, I had barely stepped out of my room when trouble found me. Bob, Mary stormed over, gritting her teeth, and demanded, tell me, were you with Kathy late last night? Stay away from her from now on, or I'll beat you to death. Impossible. Affected by my morning grumpiness, I angrily retorted. Even a clay Buddha has a temper. No one could tolerate being threatened so loudly first thing in the morning. All right, let's practice right now. Mary rolled up her sleeves. I finally snapped out of it. I'd heard about this guy's strength. He was ranked in the top 3 within the organization. Fighting early in the morning is bad luck. How about this? Let's make a bet. If I can make you laugh, I win. I swallowed hard. Make me laugh. Mary furrowed her brows. Fine. I'd like to see how this loser can make me laugh. Your ability is gigantification, right? That's right. Do you know what my superpower is? Huh, what is it? Comedy, funny. Mary looked around at the people nearby, seeking agreement. Ha 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 ha, what a joke. You laughed. I suddenly realized the other person was physically weak and simple-minded, falling for the trick so easily. Damn it, you're playing tricks? Furious. Mary grabbed my collar with her left hand while her right fist swelled up like a balloon. Hit me if you dare. Just as I clenched my teeth, bracing myself for the punch and the pain that would follow, a shout rang out, stop. A man wearing sunglasses, with dyed blonde hair and a well-proportioned figure appeared, followed by over a dozen disheveled men and women. They seemed to have just returned from a hunt outside, dragging some trophies in their hands. Boss, everyone present immediately became serious, their faces wearing respectful expressions. This blonde man with sunglasses is the leader of the Divine One's organization and also the founder of this base. There's a rule in the organization against internal conflicts. Mary and I violated this rule and were summoned for a talk by the leader, Charles. Mary came out of the meeting room, gave me a cold snort, and left. Come in. Charles's voice came from inside the room. I straightened my appearance and walked in, closing the door behind me. Take a seat. I sat across from the other person. I've learned from Sam that you're a new member who joined yesterday. Bob, 25 years old, with the ability to be funny, right? Yeah, I nodded, while worrying internally that the other person might look down on me or think the organization doesn't need a useless person like me, and kick me out. Compared to being exposed to the elements outside and constantly living in fear, this place is simply heaven. Haha, don't worry, the organization has no precedent for firing people. Charles was adept at reading other psychological activities through micro-expressions and smiled to ease the tension. But if you insist on it, I suppose I could reluctantly accommodate you. Charles took off his sunglasses and joked. Haha. I was amused and thought to myself, he's quite humorous. Was he a crosstalk performer before the apocalypse? To be honest, I think your ability is quite interesting. The organization needs talents like you who can liven up the atmosphere. Charles interlaced his fingers, rested his elbows on the table, and looked at me seriously. Thank you. I didn't know what else to say, so I took it as him trying to comfort me. All right, let's get down to business. Mary has a bad temper, but everyone in the organization knows he admires Kathy. I've already warned him, so just ignore him from now on. Okay, leader. I obediently raised my hand, signaling that I had a question. Speak. Charles tilted his head toward me. May I ask, what is your special ability? Rich. To be precise, super rich. So he didn't have any superpowers. I clicked my tongue in surprise, but at the same time, curiosity welled up inside me. Do you want to ask why? In this apocalyptic world where money is seemingly useless, everyone still obeys me, and no one with awakened abilities tries to take my position. I nodded, knowing the question was impolite, but I didn't expect him to bring it up himself, because even in this apocalypse, there's still some humanity left in people. Charles smiled. I built this base before the apocalypse, originally to prepare for nuclear war. When the end came, I took in a group of powerful ability users. They're all grateful to me, and with them around, I feel safe. All right, the interview ends here. Charles stood up, walked to the door, then paused with his back to me. Bob, others may look down on your ability, but my intuition is sharp. Who knows, you might just become a great hero. After spending some time at the base, undergoing combat training and learning about the mutated beasts, I finally got the chance to go on a mission outside. I don't know if it was specially arranged by Leader Charles, but this time Kathy is leading the team, and another acquaintance of mine, Sam, is also in the group. The location of this mission is in City J. To ensure the safety of the base, we need to regularly deal with the mutated beasts wandering in the city. Although my ability has no offensive power, with my enhanced physical attributes and firearms like guns and cannons, I can still take down mutated beasts. Boom, with the explosion of the cannon shell, another mutated beast fell into a pool of blood. Think you can ambush me? Think again. I tossed aside the cannon barrel and smirked triumphantly. This area should be clear of other mutated beasts. I glanced around and then drove the armored vehicle toward the zone Kathy was responsible for. Although she carries the nickname War Goddess and ranks first in strength within our organization, for some reason, I can't shake off this uneasy feeling in my heart. The road was littered with the corpses of mutated beasts. As I continued driving the armored vehicle forward, a figure wielding a blade soon came into view, moving swiftly amidst a swarm of over a dozen mutated beasts, yet with each precise swing of the blade, another beast's life was claimed. After Kathy finished dealing with all the mutated beasts, I got out of the armored vehicle and walked toward her. Really impressive, I said cautiously, avoiding stepping on the scattered remains of the beasts. Your efficiency is quite impressive too, Kathy said. There weren't many mutated beasts in the area I was responsible for. I knew full well this was the organization looking out for me. Kathy remained silent. Suddenly, a massive green figure descended from the sky, causing the ground to tremble violently. I almost lost my balance. Upon closer inspection, it was a giant frog mutant beast. Whoosh, a soft tongue lashed toward me. SSSK. The tongue was severed with a single slash. Kathy immediately entered combat mode, darting toward the frog-like mutant beast with wind-like speed. Under her swift and fierce assault, bleeding wounds instantly appeared across the frog mutant's body. Kathy raised her right arm, preparing to deliver the decisive strike. At that moment, a sudden mutation occurred. The frog mutant opened its mouth, revealing a fleshy bulge on its tongue. The bulge split open, exposing the upper body of a human girl. Kathy froze in her movements, staring at the little human girl in disbelief. Sister. It's me, the human little girl called out. Clang. The knife slipped from her hand and fell to the ground. Drip, drip, large, glistening teardrops fell to the ground. Sarah, is it really you, Sarah? Kathy extended her right hand toward her sister and walked forward slowly. Sister, die. The little human girl suddenly revealed a ferocious expression. Watch out, onlookers see most clearly. I noticed the frog-like mutant beast secretly lifting its webbed foot to strike Kathy, who was under its mental control. Ignoring the danger, I rushed over, wrapped Kathy in my arms, and dodged away. A heavy blow struck my back, causing me to spit out a mouthful of blood. Kathy finally regained consciousness, her right hand conjuring an even larger blade once more. I should have known. There's no way you could have survived. Let me free you now, sister. Gripping the sword, Kathy charged forward, tears streaming as she struck down her opponent. I was honorably wounded and had to lie in bed for a full month. During this period, Kathy frequently brought me fruit as a gesture of apology. In this apocalyptic world, fruit is incredibly precious. Focus on recovering. In 2 weeks our organization is holding a joint exercise with the city's other 2 major factions. Kathy picked up an apple and began peeling it. You're quite good at taking care of people, I chuckled. Kathy suddenly blushed and put down the apple. Peel it yourself. With that, she got up and left. I scratched the back of my head, unsure how I had offended the other person. Kathy stopped by the door and stammered, "Teach, thank you." What? I didn't catch it clearly. If you didn't hear it, forget it. Kathy stormed out angrily. I smiled. My hearing was perfectly fine. I was just deliberately teasing the other person, in my opinion. Kathy isn't as difficult to get along with as others say. There are 3 major organizations in City J, the Celestials, the Divines, and the Earthlings. Members of the 3 factions often spar with each other from time to time, strengthening friendships and learning from experience. The joint exercise took place in a mountain range outside the city, where a barrier had been set up in advance by ability users to contain some mutated beasts. The competition was about which organization could kill the most mutated beasts. Participants from the 3 major organizations entered the mountain range one after another. I wasn't particularly interested in this kind of competition, and my ability didn't give me any advantage, so I treated it as a leisurely stroll and wandered around casually. Then I encountered a wolf-like mutant beast. I fought fiercely with the wolf-like mutant beast for a while, without any firearms. I couldn't kill it quickly. Suddenly, I spotted a familiar figure. "Hey, you're here." Sam approached me, covered in blood. Clearly having gone through a fierce battle, Sam glanced at the wolf-like mutant beast, its powerful killing intent pinning it in place, and asked me, "How many have you killed so far? If I kill this one and then 2 more, that would make 3 in total, so you haven't killed a single one yet." With Sam's help, I successfully took down my first mutant beast. This was a team competition, where members of the organization could assist each other. "All right, I'm off to wreak havoc. Good luck to you too." Sam took a sip of water to moisten his throat before parting ways with me. Not long after Sam left, I walked right into an ambush. 3 members of the Celestial Organization severely injured me. The competition rules prohibit participants from harming each other, right? I leaned against a tree, looking at the 3 of them in confusion, unsure when I had ever crossed paths with these guys. "So you're Bob, huh? Your organization's Mary paid a hefty price to make a deal with us, for your life. The competition rules forbid harming each other, but after killing you, we'll just make it look like the work of mutant beasts." In my gradually blurring vision, I saw the 3 of them approaching me with vicious expressions. When I woke from unconsciousness, I saw a heroic figure wielding a knife standing protectively in front of me. "Rest well, don't move around." Kathy noticed I had regained consciousness. "Get out of the way, or we'll kill you too," one of them said. Clearly, he didn't know that Mary, the one they were dealing with, admired Kathy, otherwise he wouldn't have spoken such words. "I'll protect you." Kathy wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, her gaze resolute as she stood her ground without retreating a single step. A surge of warmth suddenly flooded my heart. Kathy engaged in a fierce battle with the 3 opponents. Although she was the strongest ability user in our organization, the 3 adversaries were also highly skilled, and with their numerical advantage, Kathy was ultimately overpowered and sent flying by their combined attack. Seeing Kathy injured, I was consumed by rage, feeling as if all the blood in my body was boiling. I unleashed my ability at full power, causing my nose to bleed. "Look. He's so scared he's bleeding from his nose. Ha ha." The 3 of them burst into wild laughter, laughing themselves to death in the end. Mary's plot to hire an assassin to kill me was exposed, and she was expelled from the organization, vanishing without a trace afterward. After that, I spent a peaceful and uneventful period within the organization, until one day, our scouts detected a massive wave of beast tides. These tides had already destroyed both the god and human organizations and were now surging toward our base. The base has entered level 1 alert, and all superhumans have been mobilized. If we fail, this city will become just another ruin in the apocalypse. Survival hinges on this one move. Everyone, let us join hands to avert disaster. Charles delivered an inspiring rallying cry, leading everyone to the top of the high wall. The enemy is at the gates. An endless tide of beasts stretching as far as the eye can see. Inside the base, ordinary people and those with special abilities are ready to fight to the death, doing everything they can to battle the monstrous creatures, and I'm no exception. At first, the scales of victory tipped in our favor, but unexpectedly, among this wave of beasts was a serpentine beast king, under the command of the giant serpent beast king. The creatures gained intelligence and became incredibly difficult to handle. Turning the tide of battle decisively in their favor, Kathy and several other most powerful ability users simultaneously launched an attack on the giant serpent beast king, executing a decapitation strike. Suppress. The giant python beast king could actually speak human words. Kathy and the others felt as if they were crushed by a mountain, unable to move. The words become law. "This can't go on." I struggled to calm myself, suppressing the trembling in my body, and slowly walked toward the great serpent beast king. Another one seeking death. The great serpent beast king said with disdain, "Don't underestimate my ability, you bastard." I shouted angrily, "Haha, what ability? What if I do underestimate it? My ability is comedy." "Ha ha ha ha, comedy? You're really making me laugh, your majesty." The giant python suddenly covered its mouth with its tail, dead, without the beast king issuing commands. The mutated beasts were killed one by one like headless flies, eventually scattering in defeat. "We won, Bob, the great hero, Bob, the great hero." The crowd tossed me up and caught me. I was immersed in the joy of being the center of attention when I caught a glimpse of Kathy out of the corner of my eye, smiling brightly. Bob, have the superpower of being funny. Who says comedy is useless? That's all the story. What do you think of this story? Share with me in the comments section. What would you do if you were in this situation? Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.